Hello everyone, drum tech drummer and YouTube educator Kenny Sherritt's here with a video tutorial for you on how to set up one of my favorite snare drums on the planet, the Rogers Dynasonic that's right in front of you. Now while the Rogers Dynasonic is legendary for its awesome sound, which is one of the reasons I love the snare drum so much, it's also kind of legendary for being a bit notoriously difficult to set up. So I figured since I have to put a brand new bottom head on this drum for an upcoming video shoot for you guys, I'd go ahead and take you through the process. So you're actually going through the experience with me, and I'm showing you what I know and all I've learned about it. We're gonna apply it and go through the rough process together so you can kind of go with me if you have a Dynasonic, because I know a lot of drummers have expressed to me, hey man, I love my Dynasonic, but I just can't get it set up right. So let's see today if we can get that set up right for all of us. Solid. Now before we get into taking this snare rail off, resetting it with brand new snare wires and installing it, I wanted to show you some of the reference points that I used when I first set up one of these Dynasonics I'm going to use today. That way you can understand kind of how the system works, how to install it, and how to know when you've got it right. Now if I lift this snare rail from the beginning, which is the key to what makes the system work, is the snares are actually attached to it. You can see they're no longer touching the head. They're attached to this snare rail. And if you look at it, the snare rail doesn't go all the way up on this side, but it does on this side. Yes, from the strainer side is higher than the butt side, because the way this works, it's almost like a hinge in a sense. So let's go ahead and take a measurement of the snare rail, and that way we really do have a reference point that gives us an idea if we set it back up right or not. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this right here, and if you look, yeah, it's about 13/16 of an inch right here on this side at its highest point, even if I go all the way over here. So if this is right, I've got a good starting point for making sure the snare is ready to rock. Now then, one of the most important things we want to do before we take the snare rail system off is go ahead and mark our strings. Now I recommend doing this for any snare wire system just so you have a reference point, but for the Dynasonic system, if you have it done right, if you have it set up right, mark your strings, because even if you put on a new string, you have a great starting reference point. So when it stretches, hopefully it stretches even, and you can just pull the string up a little bit using those marks going, it's equally pulled up, and it will stay balanced to be easy to maintain throughout the life of the snare wires and the snare string. Now one thing I do want to note is that my strainer is kind of set where I like it, man. It's set at the distance I like it, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it from here and redo it here. Don't turn the strainer tighter, don't turn it looser. I've got to kind of set right in the middle like I do for every other snare drum. Gently pull the system out, and we got a snare rail to go ahead and take those screws out, remount some snare wires, and get it on. Let's do it, y'all. All right, now that we got the snare rail system off, I'm going to go ahead and take the screws out that hold these wires in and put a brand new set of Rogers Snappy snares on. Now, if you take a look at this, I have my little head tool. I'm going to go ahead and get in here and get this screw undone right here, and just kind of take her out. Now one thing I want you to realize is that this set nut will begin to loosen as you take it out. So you want to be really careful, because it'll go ahead and pop out on you if you're not paying attention. You don't want it to drop off on the floor and have to chase it. But do be aware that once you undo this screw, you are undoing the tension rod that does the tension for the snares. So this adjusting rod, which is why I'm doing this with my fingers, it's just a little bit slower, a little bit more precise. And take this one out, and then I'm going to go ahead and make sure she kind of sits in there, because I don't want to trace her down. I'm going to grab a little smaller point one and go for the other side. So the smaller point screwdriver works for here. Now these are in here pretty tight, y'all, so I'm having to go ahead and dig in pretty deep to get them out. And then you just want to make sure you don't lose track of your screw. Pop these out. Now you'll notice that these are upside down, like the Rogers logo actually goes down onto it. So if you have any questions, you can see how it sits right here with the rail. It's got a little kind of raised bump here that this sits up against, and so does this. So when you see it, you can see how it sits and aligns with the two holes. So you don't want it to be like offset where it's locking in. You want it right on top of the snare rail nubs right here, and I'll show it up close to this guy right here and this guy right here, and that way y'all can kind of see. So I'm going to swap these out, put these older wires out here, and put these new wires on. Now this is going to be a pretty direct process. So again, the Rogers logo goes down, match the holes, you see them sit on top of the plate, because again, these wires are suspended. you want to keep that loosey-goose feeling with it. Here, now this little screw can be a bit of a pain, so I'm going to try to hand set it first. I'm going to get this bad boy in here. Now this can be a difficult part, y'all. It's probably like one of the most difficult parts because it's such a tiny screw. You're like, come on! Oh my goodness. Okay, there it is. And you want to make sure it threads properly too. You want the screw to seat solidly, sit onto the snare wire and press it up against the frame. Now I'm going to go ahead, before I tighten it down, I'm going to install the other side. And until I'm tightening, I can use this thinner screwdriver just kind of to get it to move into place. Now thankfully I didn't have to reseat this again. This nut can come right out. This can pop out. You can see how loose it is. It's like a set nut. So you just want to make sure you got both these in here before you tighten them down all the way, because you just want to make sure you've got a good centering of these wires. Now before you put the final tightening, you just want to make sure she's centered and set. Then go ahead and tighten this bad boy down. Tighten this bad boy down. And again, one of the things you want to make sure of is if you look here, you can see how the plate sits evenly with the end of the rail. Same with this side. You want it to kind of be even. You don't want it to be tilted one way or another. You want this to be centered. So I'm going to double check that quickly. And now I know for a fact I've got an even seat of these wires. And if for some reason you don't, you just, undo it, do it again, make sure she's right, but hopefully you get it right the first time. So now that I've installed the bottom head on the drum, I'm going to go ahead and install the snare wires and the snare rail as we put them together earlier. One tip I did want to recommend for anyone who does mark their strings is that if you're putting on new strings, you might want to actually just double check your measurements so you can be truly accurate. It's good to kind of put the strings together next to each other, but it's also good to have measurements so you can know at all times. Now this measurement here for the butt plate, I'm looking at about, I don't know, just a tick under 8 inches. So we're talking about 7 15/16 inches of distance that I can mark on my new string to let it be done. Until then, I'm going to go ahead and put this string in its holster and slot these wires into where they belong. Now this side's a little bit easier on the other side. Remember, if you take the string out, you've got to make sure that the string that goes back in, not only the same way and on the same size if you're using markings, but make sure that you seat on this rail before you stuff everything through the little slots. All right, so now I just want to slide this through, slot this in, and boom, snare wires are back into position. Now I'm just going to go ahead and back these out a little bit by hand, make sure I can get the string right through quickly and easily. Pop that string in. Make sure it's coming out to the right side so it's not going up into the strainer. I don't want it up in there. I don't want it grinding up in things. So this is one of the tricky parts. Come on. String through. All right. And we'll do the same on the other side. Again, I like to come at it from the side, so hopefully it just, pokes right down through the hole. And we're done, and we've got these seated and set. And now the challenge is making sure this snare rail system is seated in the middle. Now for me, I want to pull these around here and kind of finger tighten one side of this. I'm going to go ahead and seat the butt plate first and kind of get a guesstimate of where I am, and then to kind of wiggle the whole thing together. But if I turn my thing and I see my little marking, bam, it's right there. So I'm going to take this right here, finger tighten it. Because again, I just want to get a good guesstimate of where I was before. And if I turn this string, hallelujah, that marks back where it belongs. And so I can kind of just finger tighten this. Now one thing I do recommend, once I back this out a little, pull these both into their position to see where they are, and then we'll do the leveling when the time comes, because again, that just seems a little far. And that's the hard part about this. The most challenging part, and this is why I recommend markings, period, is getting these at the right distance. So I'm going to go ahead and just tighten these down, because now I can kind of look at what I had before I do the other side. Isn't that great? Because I can go ahead and take the tape measure, check with the measurement I had before, and let's see what I get. All right, if I pull straight up and I bring it all the way to the end here, oh my goodness, 13/16. Tighten just a touch more. And then I'm going to pull this up again, make sure I'm pulling even by looking at the center of these two rods right here. Measure this up. Yeah, 13/16. So I've got a good starting point on this side. Now we're gonna go ahead and set the other side. And while the other side has got a limited ability to be measured because it stops, that can actually be your benefit. Now I've got markings to help me, which is a killer thing. And I also know that this was actually pulled all the way down when I did my markings. You know, that's one of the things you want to make sure you know where your markings are when you, or where your strainer is when you do the marking. But here, I can pull it right to this point, look at my markings and go, hey man, those are pretty concrete. So if I'm pulling back tension like this and it can't go, oh my goodness. I just hit that rack that said I couldn't go anywhere, and look, my marks match right up, man. And then I show, yep, perfect. So now I've got to kind of set exactly where I want. I'm going to go tighten it down with the appropriate key. And I'm going to go back and forth in tiny motions and lock her down so she gives me what I need. Come on. And I'm going to do the same on the other side, make sure this is secured and locked down from where I had it. Double check my motion, double check and see, hey man, that's right. I've got the motion I had before. And I've got the space I got, and I got the lift happening that I need. We got this here, comes right up above. I can go ahead and tighten that bad boy down. Back and forth. And now I've got a great starting point to check out what's going on. Now the cool thing about this is if I'm right, and I hope I'm right on this first try, we're set, but I'll still walk you through the process of setting this out. Now let's just see what we got. Ah, beautiful. Loosen up those wires just a touch. All right, so I adjusted it up a little bit, loosened up them snare wires. They were a little bit tight in the initial setting. I went a little too tight with the plate. Let's see. Let's see what she does when I give her just a little twist up. A little tightening of the wires. Oh, I can hear it settle right up. Back that plate back down just a little. And the best part is if I hold it up here, I don't even have to ask. We can see how much we have to tighten them up just a little bit by putting it by the drum and seeing how level it is. Almost no sympathetic snare buzz whatsoever, so it lets me know I'm pretty close to having it where I want, because I have sensitivity across the board on this drum right now. So let's put this on a stand. Double check our leveling to make sure we're putting this together right, and hopefully this helps you get your Dynasonic dialed, y'all. Be right back. Let's go get a stand. All right, y'all, so now I'm crouched down here by the light of no forgiveness, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how this thing sets up and levels, because the key here is that we're pretty darn close. Now I just want to make sure it's level on both sides. So let's check the butt plate first. Now if you look here, you can see that the butt plate, it's pretty even, but I can see that this one side, I'd have to pull it evenly to make sure it seats evenly. So this is a situation where I could just pull down on it, see it's even, and we're rocking and rolling. I can double check the tightness, make sure we're good all the way around. And this was a matter of it sitting right on the string. You just had to level it out on the string, no big deal. We got evenness here, and we get a nice pull and a lever like pull. And when I look underneath, yep, I get the full lever, yet it disconnects from the head. So let's turn this around and take a look at this side. Here's the fun part. Check this out. Bam, bam. All right. Now there's no doubt whether it's level. And so now we get to check on the other side, because we got an even pull on this side. So let's see what happens. We engage the wires. Oh, there's that Dynasonic sound I'm looking for. Come on! See, this little rail here isn't just for protection, y'all. It's a great way to level this and kind of make sure that you're getting your lever action out of your wires. I just got to engage my wires here and see. Oh, there it is. There's that breath. There it is. Let me get my sticks. I'm so excited like a child. Ooh, let's put on some mics and see what that sounds like. Now, well, this is set up for light tuning, so that might be blasted through the microphone. Check my level. Okay, that's nice. And I know it's that Dynasonic sound because you hear that thickness. Even at a high tension, man. So this is a pretty tightly tuned drum. Sensitivity across the board. I have the snares pretty loose. And if I hit a tom, nothing. Look at that. I can actually go. Sensitivities for days, y'all. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope it helps you get your Dynasonic set up, helps you level your snare wires to where you get that true Dynasonic sound, y'all. It takes a little work, but it ain't that bad of a thing to do, and the payoff, phenomenal. Stick around and watch more videos on YouTube. Kenny Shares, Drum Tech, Drum Tuning, Drum Tips. Kenny Shares, YouTube.